There is one area in which China is still unable to compete with the United States, a field in which the United States remains the undisputed world leader. Neither China, Japan, nor any European country comes close. I'm referring, of course, to universities. No matter which ranking you look at, in all of them, American universities occupy almost all the top positions. Having a degree from Yale, Stanford, or MIT seems like a sure gateway to the best jobs. Many of you may think that they are very proud of their universities in the United States, that all the students happily go to campus knowing that a bright future awaits them. But check out this headline.
Students protest tuition hikes as universities continue online. Voice of America News.
But why are the students protesting? Does it have something to do with the coronavirus? Are they so eager to return to face-to-face classes? Not at all. American universities may be great, but they do have one major problem: tuition fees. In recent decades, the price of college in the United States has skyrocketed. Tuition costs 3 times as much today as it did 30 years ago. To give you an idea, studying at Harvard or Yale can cost more than $50,000 in tuition per year. How do you pay for all that? I'm sure many of you already know the answer, especially those of you unlucky enough to be watching this video from the United States, with student loans. In this country, 2 out of 3 students are in debt to pay off their tuition. Whenever they finish their studies, the average amount they owe is $29,000. And I repeat, that's the average of what they owe. They have actually spent much more. The student debt accumulated by 45 million Americans has soared to $1.5 trillion. And some of you are probably wondering, is that a lot? Is it too little? Well, the truth is that is a lot of money. It is more than the GDP of a country like Spain. Or put it another way, there are only 12 countries that in a year would manage to produce, without the coronavirus, enough to pay off the debt accumulated by US college students. And all of this is especially painful when compared to Europe, where studying at university is almost free for students in most of the countries here. Healthcare and free universities? I'm really sorry, Americans. In fact, the problem with college tuition is a political priority. Had it not been for the coronavirus, this would have been talked about at length during the 2020 presidential election. In fact, some Democratic candidates like Bernie Sanders were putting forward proposals like this one.
U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders proposes bill for tuition-free college, end to student debt. Daily Cal.
So the question is, why is university or college so expensive in the US? What are the differences between the US and European university models? And today, we're going to answer all of these questions. But first, let's look a little bit of history. Open your textbooks to chapter 3.
The road to the middle class.
Up until World War II, the university was reserved for only the elite. But everything changed during the war. President Roosevelt wanted his soldiers to have a better future after risking their lives in Europe and the Pacific. So, 2 weeks after the Normandy landings, he passed the Servicemen's Readjustment Act. The outcome of this law, along with the prosperity that followed the war, meant that the United States became the first country in the world in which the middle classes went to college. It is the crystallization of the American dream, being able to send your children to college.
To discuss the surest path to the middle class, some form of higher education.
So far, every generation except from this one has lived better than their parents' generation. There are things that have become very affordable: technology, traveling, watching excellent shows like VisualPolitik. But it is also true that 2 more important things are becoming more expensive: housing and university. Why has tuition skyrocketed to prohibitive prices? The law of supply and demand provides a good explanation. The number of college students in the United States has doubled in 50 years. We are not only talking about US citizens, but also foreign students. More than 1 million people from all over the world travel to study in the United States every year. And now, you may be thinking, but are there so many young people from all over the world willing to spend loads of money in order to not miss out on the legendary university parties? Well, although I don't rule out the American Pie factor, I think there are other reasons to explain the attraction of the US university.
U.S. schools take 8 of 10 top spots on U.S. News' Best Global Universities list for 2020, Newsweek.
And yes, I know what you're going to say. Wow, Grant. A ranking made in the United States that says, hey guys, we are the best. Seems legit. But here we have the ranking of the University of Shanghai. As you can see by the little flags, the conclusion is obvious. No matter which ranking you look at, US universities are the most prestigious in the world. And I know what you may be wondering, how are these rankings done? Can you really measure how well a teacher teaches? Do they measure the number of passes? Well, pay attention, because here comes the real crux of the matter. Measuring the quality of teachers' teaching is difficult. What we can measure is an individual's quality as a researcher, publications in journals, the number of times he or she has been cited, etc., etc. So, what do you need if you want your university university to be at the top of the ranking? Money. Money to have the best laboratories, but above all, have the best researchers. To give you an idea, half the expenses of a university like Harvard go to paying the staff. To give you a comparison, a university professor in Spain, in the best cases, can earn around $80,000 a year. At Harvard, the average is around $200,000. But how is all this paid for? Where does the money come from? Well, take a look at this graph. This will be on the test. As you can see, it is paid for with million-dollar donations from alumni, public funds that primarily reward research, and student tuition. In the end, Americans spend 2.7% of their GDP on university education. This is well above what the OECD average is of 1.6. What does all this mean? Well, a good part of this technological race is being financed by students. And that is not the only bad news for the unlucky students.
Study. Half of employers don't think college prepares students for work. Daily Caller.
What is clear is that in the US university model, all professors are more concerned with research than with teaching, because it is research that gives them prestige and not teaching. Meanwhile, what is the story in Europe? Let's look at that now.
The European model.
The main difference between the US university model and the European model is that the best universities in Europe are public. But when we say public, it is a way of saying that the tuition is, how should I say this? It's not exactly free, but it is a gift compared to the public ones in the United States. Because yes, there are public universities in the United States, the so-called state universities, but the price difference is enormous. The lowest average price of tuition at a state university is more than $8,000 a year. However, in Spain, the most expensive public tuition at a public university in Catalonia is $2,800. And I want to emphasize that here I have compared the cheapest with the most expensive. The differences are mainly due to two factors. The first is that in Europe, the state covers approximately 80% of the cost of public universities each year, and it does so for all its students, regardless of whether they come from rich or poor families. The second factor is that there is not so much eagerness to do research. Much more importance is given to teaching. But even European private universities are much cheaper than US universities. The average tuition at Harvard, Yale, or MIT is $50,000 a year, while the most expensive tuition at the University of Navarra in Spain is around $18,000. So what is the advantage of the European model? Well, it is not common to see people going into debt to pay for college. And what does Europe sacrifice by having such cheap universities? Well, the university does not do as much research. And since it does not do as much research, it's not very attractive. To see European universities in the global rankings, you have to go down to 26th place first to find Danish university, 37th to see a French one, and 47th to see a German one. To see a Spanish or Italian university, we have to go all the way down to the 150th ranking. Of course, when you see where Europe's universities are in these global rankings, you understand why the European Commission has these kind of concerns.
EU plans European rival to Google with new data and AI proposals. Forbes.
Research projects are very poor, with little funding. Europe has a very social, affordable university model, but with this kind of model, it is not possible to create a technological giant like Facebook. The ideal would be to have a university that does more research, but is still within the reach of any pocket. So what model is prevailing in the world? And more importantly, is it possible to have the best of both models? Well, we're going to look at that right now.
Two struggling models.
I know what many of you are asking yourselves at this point. Is it really worth spending so much money on a university education? Is studying at university really a guarantee of having a good job in the future? If you look at the data, the answer we find is that it depends. For starters, 30% of students drop out of college before finishing. That means they have paid the first few years of tuition for nothing. Clearly, in this case, spending so much money has been a bad investment, even if those students do go on to become VisualPolitik hosts and comedians, which, let me tell you, are making the big bucks here. But what about those who do finish? Well, it depends on the degree and the university. A telecommunications engineer does not earn the same as an art history graduate, and a graduate of Yale does not earn the same as a graduate of the University of Nevada. The average salary 10 years after earning a degree at Harvard is between $80,000 to $90,000. However, at other private universities, the average salary is around $40,000. That is about the same as what you would earn if you studied at a state university, which is much cheaper. In other words, choosing college doesn't just mean that many students go into debt. It also involves a huge risk. Depending on the university you choose, you will have one job or another. So what do politicians like Bernie Sanders propose to solve this problem? Quite simply, public spending.
Our proposal, which costs $2.2 trillion, over 10 years will be fully paid for by a tax on Wall Street speculation.
In other words, Bernie Sanders wants the state to pay for all new tuition and all student debt. We're talking about $2.2 trillion over 10 years. And from there, the White House would have to pay another $48 billion a year to pay for new tuition. To put this in perspective, we're talking about the cost of hosting 3 Olympic Games every year, year after year. As you can imagine, at a time when the US is already spending hand over fist on coronavirus relief, it doesn't look like they're going to be able to spend more on universities. So, is there no public aid for universities? Well, yes, there is. What happens is that it is not direct aid, but loans from the government at very low interest rates. To give you an idea, 92% of all the student debt we have been talking about are loans from Washington. For example, one of the most commonly used formulas is called PAYE, pay as you earn. When you finish college, you pay back your loan to Washington by giving them 10% of what you earn in salary. If you finish paying off your debt, great for everyone. But if you don't do well in life and haven't been able to pay back the debt within 20 years, the state forgives the rest. 8 million Americans are enrolled in this type of program. So what are they complaining about? Well, precisely because this type of aid has contributed to further increases in tuition costs. Since students can get credit to pay for it, universities do not hesitate to ask for astronomical amounts for tuition. In other words, there seems to be no perfect solution to this problem. However, there is one thing we can say. If there is a model that is taking hold in the world, it's that of the United States. For example, Saudi Arabia has invested some $10 billion in creating a university following the US model. When Qatar wants to boost its university system, they don't just copy the US model, they transport it directly.
In Qatar's education city, U.S. colleges are building an academic oasis. Washington Post.
Georgetown and Northwestern are some of the universities that have their own campuses in Qatar. Yale has a base in Singapore. New York University is in Shanghai and Abu Dhabi. In other words, it seems that the world prefers expensive tuition in exchange for cutting-edge research. Let's be clear, Silicon Valley would not exist if it weren't for Stanford University. And the same is true in many other fields. If the United States is a leader in so many technologies, it is largely because they've been able to fund scientific research. This is thanks to the universities. In other words, the university has proven that it is the best place to do research. The question now is it really the best place to learn? Put a different way, will it still be as important to have a university degree to get a good job in the future? But that's a topic for another video. This is going to be a debate that will be heavily discussed in the coming years. So keep your eye out for news like this.
Google, Apple, and 12 other companies that no longer require employees to have a college degree. See NBC.
And now, it's over to you. Do you think the university model is going to change? Do you think our children will have to go into debt to pay for college? Or maybe they'll end up getting a degree from Google? And just how much have I annoyed Americans with the fact that I got university for free and didn't even finish? Leave your answer in the comments below. As always, we release new videos every week, so don't forget to subscribe to VisualPolitik and hit the little bell down there so you don't miss any of our updates. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and we'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.
And if you want to learn more about politics and hear even more of my lovely voice, you can join us at Reconsider Media. We have a podcast at reconsidermedia.com/podcast. See you there.